not being able to do anything about it, or going to work but only getting $1 a day for your trouble. That's some of what people in ICE detention right here in California, what they say their reality is, and that while trying to protest those conditions, they've suffered worse, like abuse and taunting at the hands of the guards patrolling their dorms. All of it now part of a class action lawsuit that was just filed. Esperanza Coatle, co-director and detained organizer at Pangea Legal Services of San Francisco, with me now live, along with Minju Cho, staff attorney with the Immigrants' Rights Program at the ACLU of Northern California, to explain more about this suit, which came as a next step after 7 days worth of a hunger strike over some of these issues. Esperanza, Minju, welcome to Fox 40 News at 11.
Thank you so much for having us.
Definitely. Now, this suit is fundamentally about retaliation for what's been, in essence, a peaceful and, in your assessment, constitutionally protected protest over the living conditions and treatment these detainees say they've been enduring, right? And some of the retaliation they're alleging includes sexually abusive pat-downs. Minju, is that what's going on?
Yes, to be clear, the sexually abusive pat-downs are actually a retaliation response that they have experienced after prior peaceful protests before the hunger strike. The hunger strike represents an escalation of their collective protest because, in part, of those sexually abusive and very disturbing pat downs that have caused immense distress to many of the men detained inside.
And Esperanza, since there is an ongoing hunger strike, your clients claim detention center staff are taunting them with food and cutting the heat to their dorms, making it painfully cold where they have to sleep, and then not allowing them to exercise their chosen faith or worship?
That's correct, yes. So, individuals have been filing grievances about these conditions for years. There's already 3 complaints that were filed at the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. But no, they feel like their voice has not been heard. There's no accountability on the staff or ICE officials who are detaining them. And this is the reason why one of the reasons why they've launched this hunger strike, to protest and have their voices be heard and be taken seriously. And the day that they decided to file these grievances and declare their hunger strike, the moment these grievances were received, officers immediately came into the dorms. They tried to separate individuals, and once they saw that a full dorm was declaring a hunger strike, instead their next move was to confiscate food, to take away access to go outside. So right now, individuals in Mesa Verde, they're in 24-hour confinement. They're not allowed to access law library, which is a useful tool, especially for individuals who don't have an attorney to represent themselves. They don't have arts and crafts, so they're literally enclosed in their dorm 24 hours and not allowed to do anything. And instead, they're being laughed at, humiliated. Food is bring over to their faces, asking "Doesn't this smell good?" Right?
My.
And it's just the conditions and the reality that they're dealing with face to face, especially as they're trying to get their voices out and be taken more seriously and be respected with dignity.
Very disturbing claims. These detainees, as you mentioned, are at the Mesa Verde Immigration and Customs Enforcement Center in Bakersfield and at the Golden State Annex in McFarland. And these facilities are under the purview of GEO Group, which is the for-profit group that runs them. That's correct, Minju?
Yes, that's right. GEO Group owns and operates both facilities under a contract with ICE. It's a for-profit contract, which means the less money they spend on the care of the people in their custody, the more money goes to their pockets and their shareholders. And that's part of what makes the conditions in those facilities so unbearable. Even though, when the government detains people, their health and safety is in the government's hands. It's the responsibility of the government to make sure that they are safe. But by outsourcing these facilities to for-profit private contractors, the opposite is happening. And that is why immigration detention in California is so inhumane as well as unnecessary. People in immigration detention are there because they are pursuing their right to be in the United States. None of them are people who have definitively been found to not belong in the US. That is why they are in the middle of proceedings. All of these people can pursue their cases from the outside. This is civil detention. And detention is not necessary. They can do it while they're in their communities, with their family, with their loved ones, with their support groups. And that is what we are fighting for.
Okay.
And that's what the hunger strikers are fighting for.
Alrighty, and before we run out of time, I just want to ask, some people would say that people who've chosen to violate the laws of this country, I know you just mentioned it's not been definitively decided that that is what happened, but some would say these are people who have violated the law, which is why they've been detained because they were in a situation that presented itself that way, that they should not enjoy the same guarantees of free speech protection as everyone else. And why should we be worried about $1 a day wages for people who are being detained for violating America's laws? Esperanza, what would you say to them?
Well, this is the thing. There is a situation that happened years ago, right? But we also need to consider the time and length when an incident occurred. And right now, because as already mentioned, people who are currently detained, they are human beings and they are in a process for civil matters. Whatever whatever sentence they got, they already served time for that. Mm-hmm. These are individuals whose rights should also be respected. Whether an individual has status or not, getting paid $1 a day for doing janitorial work, that is slavery. That is modern day slavery. That is inhumane, and that is just not morally right for any human being here in California or anywhere in the world.
Ladies, we're going to, unfortunately, because of time, have to put a pin in it there, but definitely a case that we will be following, and we will have you back. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Fox 40 has reached out to ICE and to GEO Group for comment about this newly filed suit. From GEO, we've heard this in part, quote, "We strongly reject these baseless allegations, which are part of a long-standing radical campaign to attack ICE's contractors, abolish ICE, and end federal immigration detention by proxy in the state of California. As it relates to allegations regarding retaliation, GEO has a zero-tolerance policy with respect to staff misconduct. We have a grievance process in place for use by persons housed at our facilities that is grounded in accessibility, confidentiality, and fairness, objectivity, and integrity without fear of retaliation. Any alleged misconduct by GEO staff is promptly investigated and addressed."